Richard, the President Pro Tem of the city. Yeah.
I'm going to start. What we're going to do is do a little bit of introduction to the council and process and procedure for tonight. So I'm Richard Conti. I'm the President Pro Tem of the council. And we'll start just to talk a little bit about the council itself and how we're structured. So we are a 15-member body elected from 15 separate wards, plus the council president, who's elected citywide. And we are the legislative body
Thank you, Ms. Fahey. And right now, what we're going to do is we're going to present our students with your certificate of appreciation for being here. So when I call your name, just come to the front. And I apologize to the parents and to our students if I mispronounce your name. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize. But tell me your correct name. So the first certificate is in their alphabetical order, I believe. Zahara Abdul Razik. Last name. Council members, we are going to start our caucus right now. So, Mr. Conti.
All right. So what we're going to do. All right, so what we're going to do, as I indicated before, we're going to go through the agenda for tonight's meeting. So you have this document here, which on the cover says agenda. And this, as I said, this agenda, we already discussed this on Wednesday, which was our longer caucus. So what we do tonight is we're going to recap what we discussed on Wednesday and just go over everything again. And if there's any new information that may have come up, we'll also detail that. So there's going to be a little bit of a change also in what we do tonight. We do have the patroons presentation? We're doing the patroons? They're going to be here, right? Okay, so we're going to do a little change in our agenda from what you see here. So we have a resolution on the agenda tonight. If you go to the page that says Introduction of Resolutions, which is about 4 pages in, you'll see down further the one that's numbered 295219R. So that is a resolution congratulating the Albany Patroons on their professional basketball league championship. We're going to adopt that resolution tonight, but we're also going to be doing a presentation. So some representatives from the Patroons will be here when our meeting starts a little bit later. So rather than wait until we get to that part of the agenda, when we have a special resolution like that, where we're going to make a presentation, we usually take it out of order so that we can make the presentation at the beginning of the meeting rather than having everybody wait. So what we're going to do, if you go again to the first page, we're going to start the meeting with our roll call. Then the council president will welcome. We will then stand for a pledge of allegiance, and then we observe a moment of silence. And then after the moment of silence, I'm going to make a motion to change the order of our business so as to take up resolution 295219R as our first item. And then we'll adopt that change in order by voice vote. And then we're going to recognize Councilmember Love over there, who will introduce the resolution. The clerk will then read the resolution, and then we'll be able to make it, any member who wishes to speak on the resolution at that point will be able to speak on it. And then after adopted, we'll make a presentation to representatives from the Patroons who will be here later this evening. So that's a little bit of a change in our agenda for tonight, which we do from time to time when we have special presentations like that. Once we make that presentation, and we'll probably take some photos as well, once we make that presentation, then we'll go back to the regular order of our agenda. We will next, and also a little bit different tonight, I think after we do that and before we do public comment, we will do the introduction of the students. We'll allow you, have everybody introduce yourselves and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, what year you're in, what school you're in, and if you have any college plans at this point, whatever else you want to say, so we can all get to know you, et cetera. So we'll do that after we make the presentation, and then we'll do our introductions. After the introductions, we'll go into what's called our public comment period. And so at every meeting of the council and also at committee meetings, members of the public are allowed to come and speak to us on a topic that's related to the city. People who sign up for public comment, they sign up in advance and before the meeting starts. And public speakers have 5 minutes to address the council. It's not a public hearing, so it's not a question and answer, give and take. It's just a public comment where we allow members of the public to speak to us on a particular issue, 5 minutes. Our public comment period lasts 30 minutes. If we have additional speakers beyond that, we can extend the public comment period for an additional 30 minutes.
So at this point, I'm going to ask the clerk, how many people do we have signed up for tonight? So at this point, we just have one person signed up, which sometimes is unusual, sometimes we have a lot. But members, people can still sign up until we begin the meeting at 7 o'clock. Once the public comment period is over, then we move back into our regular agenda. We don't have minutes for tonight's meeting. We then go to our consideration of local laws. So as you go through the agenda now, you'll see local laws held. That particular local law is still in committee, in the planning committee, and so that will not be coming up for a vote tonight. You have on your desk a separate document called Albany Common Council Active Calendar. And this is a separate document which tells you what on our agenda is going to be coming up for a vote tonight. So it's on your desk. And we also keep documents at the table in front of the railing there for members of the public so that they have the same documents that we have. So the local laws will be held tonight. Then we usually move to the introduction of ordinances. So we have no new ordinances for introduction tonight. So we would skip over that. And then we move to the next part of the agenda, which is ordinances held. So these are ordinances that have been previously introduced. They are still in committee or at various stages of consideration, but none of the ordinances on the agenda that have previously been introduced are ready for a vote tonight. Item number 6 on the agenda, which is by Mr. Hoey and Council Members Duche and Anane, which relates to backyard hens. That was an ordinance that was considered in committee last week. There was some discussion on that. There are still some issues that need to be worked out. So that's a committee that's, that's an ordinance that's undergoing ongoing discussion, but it was not ready to move out of committee last week, so that's still going to be held for tonight. We then come to the next part of the agenda, which is the introduction of resolutions. So this is the part of the agenda where we have a number of items that will be acted on. So these are resolutions. These are new resolutions, some of which will come up for a vote, some of which will be referred to committee tonight. The first resolution is by counts 245219, is by Mr. Anane. It would support an action taken by the Civil Service Commission to waive civil service fees for recent City of Albany high school graduates. I don't know if Mr. Anane wants to say anything, or you can actually say something when it comes up for a vote. He tends to be loquacious. And then moving forward, we come to Resolution 25. And I'll tell you a little bit about in terms of how we get these numbers, by the way. So Resolution number 255219R, the way that translates is that's the 25th resolution that was introduced this year. That's the 25. 52 indicates the meeting at which it was introduced. So the 5 stands for May, and the 2 stands for the second meeting. So we know that that was the 25th resolution introduced at the second meeting of the Common Council in May in the year 2019. And so that's the numbering system that we use. Anyway, that resolution also by Mr. Anane would look at what's something called BEG buttons. And these are buttons that at traffic signals, pedestrian crossings, you'll see nowadays, if you want to cross, the pedestrian want to cross, you press the button, and sometimes now it might say wait, but that's supposed to activate the pedestrian crossing signal to allow you to cross. And without getting into all the complications, so you have two types of systems here where sometimes where you have crossing signals where there's a regular cycle in the older ones where they automatically go from, you know, the different north, south, east, west, but a pedestrian crossing is within that cycle. So it's automatic that a pedestrian crossing would pop up. Nowadays, sometimes with some of the newer traffic intersections, whatever, you have these buttons where the pedestrian crossing is not in the normal cycle, so unless you press the button to activate the pedestrian crossing, it's not going to automatically pick up. So there's a whole issue about to what extent, and there's something we call them BEG buttons, to what extent this really contributes to a walkable city, pedestrian-friendly city. Sometimes, you know, the argument is sometimes you have people standing there thinking that a pedestrian crossing is not going to come up, but it's not going to come up because they don't know they're supposed to press the button. And we have two different systems, and sometimes it might encourage people to just not wait and just cross against the light and things like that. So it's a whole issue about how we design nowadays traffic crossings and upgrades and pedestrian crossings and things like that. So this is going to be referred to the Planning Committee, so that gives us an opportunity to have further discussion on it with folks in traffic safety and the appropriate use of these buttons. The next three resolutions, 26, 27, and 28, confirm the mayor's reappointment of members to the Albany Parking Authority. So there are a number of boards and commissions in the city, Parking Authority, the Zoning Board, Planning Board, Police Community Relations Board, Human Rights Commission, et cetera, et cetera. In some cases, appointments are made by the mayor, subject to the council confirmation. And in this case, these are appointments. So the Parking Authority is a body created under state law, and state law provides that the governing board or the council has to confirm the mayor's appointments to that authority. They serve for a fixed term, and so that's what we're doing tonight. So these are reappointments that the mayor is making subject to our confirmation of those appointments. There are some bodies where the council has direct appointments, such as the Human Rights Commission, Community Police Relations Board, where we have direct appointments, where the council goes through a process to interview applicants, and we make appointments. The mayor has direct appointments, and you know, there's a mix of how boards, authorities, and commissions are created. These are going to be introduced tonight by Councilmember Fahey, and they're going to be referred to the Planning Committee. That gives us an opportunity to have the appointees come in. We can interview them, learn more about what's happening with the Parking Authority, and that's one way we also exercise oversight over the Parking Authority by being able to interview and meet the people who are appointed to these boards and commissions. The next resolution, number 29, that's the one congratulating the patroons. We will already have done that at the beginning of our meeting, and so that one will already have been done by the time we get to this. The next resolution you have is 305219. This is a resolution consenting to a salary adjustment for 2 positions in the Department of Youth and Workforce Services. So the council, the budget is adopted. This is making an adjustment or an amendment in effect to the 2019 budget. So the council gets the budget in October of the prior fiscal year, and then we can make changes, adopt it, et cetera. So the current budget for 2019 was adopted by the council in November of 2018. As in any budgets during the course of the year, there are modifications, adjustments that might be made, and there's a process in place under the charter for making adjustments to the budget. There's a body called the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, which generally reviews and approves budget adjustments or amendments. That's a body that includes the council president, the corporation council, the mayor, the city treasurer, and the city auditor. But there are certain transfers that require prior approval by the council before E&A can act. And any transfer or change in a salary rate or salary total has to come to the council, and we have to approve it before the Board of E&A is allowed to adopt it. And this is one of those. So these are 2 positions in the Department of Youth and Workforce Services, which is actually a department that's funded off budget. Well, it's not off budget. It's funded by grant funding, not general fund money. And these are 2 positions where the department has had difficulty filling them because of the competitive nature of the salary. So they have requested an adjustment in salary to make the 2 positions more competitive so that they could fill them. Commissioner, we had representatives from Youth and Workforce at our caucus on Wednesday to address and answer any questions and make the presentation. So this was already discussed in greater depth on Wednesday, and the council will be moving for passage on this tonight. Now, we have 2 other resolutions which you don't see on here. So there's a provision in our rules that allows an addition of items to the agenda that for one reason or another may not have been ready at the time that the printed agenda came out, or the issue may not have been known, et cetera, and something came up. So there's a provision where the council can add to the printed agenda additional items by majority consent for introduction. And we have 2 items like that tonight. And they are one of them is on your active calendar. So one of them is, and so I will, at this point, I'm going to making a motion to add by majority consent 2 resolutions to the agenda, 315219R and 325219R. And Mr. Flynn is doing by the way, the last one is the sponsor of the number 30. Once that motion is adopted by voice vote, then the president will recognize the sponsors of those 2 resolutions. So 305219R is a resolution by Mr. Kimbrough. I'm sorry, 31. Okay, 315219R. So write those numbers in because I don't think they're on your printed agenda. 315219R. That's a resolution that relates to a piece of housing legislation that's pending before the state legislature. That will be an introduction tonight, and that resolution will be referred to the Housing Committee for further consideration. Then the second resolution we have is numbered 325219R. And that's going to be a resolution by Mr. Johnson. This is the resolution I alluded to earlier. This relates to the Beaver Creek Clean Water Project. This is a home rule message. So the state legislature cannot pass legislation that affects a specific municipality unless that municipality passes a home rule message or request asking the state legislature to do it. It's called the Home Rule provision of the state constitution. So the particular piece of state legislation would allow the water department, in terms of the Beaver Creek Clean Water Project, to use a portion of, or to, actually, it's kind of using a portion of Lincoln Park. We've already approved part of this last year. This is a modification to use a portion of Lincoln Park for the project. And under state law, anytime you use parkland, or if you want to use parkland for a purpose other than a park use, you need to get the permission of the state legislature to do what's called an alienation bill. And when it's alienated, that then authorizes the council, it will come back to us again, to make a provision to allow the use of that property. Anytime you alienate a portion of parkland, the municipality has to, in effect, donate or designate comparable land for the land that's being alienated, or do a financial contribution. In this case, I believe what the project, and this part is really, it's going to be going under, it's not going to actually alienate the land. Technically, it's not going to alienate the land, because that portion of the park is going to stay park, but the project is going to have to go underneath and dig to create a main or whatever that's going to go over to Morton Avenue. And so, because we're disrupting potentially part of the park, et cetera, it's considered alienation, and so we're going to need to do that. So this would be a pass. We need to pass this. Then this gets sent up to the state legislature, and then they are allowed to consider that piece of legislation. So those are the two MCs to write into your agenda: 315219R, the housing bill by Mr. Kimbrough, which will be referred to housing, and the park alienation bill by Mr. Johnson, 325219R, which will be a pass for tonight. So those are all the new resolutions we're going to have for tonight. Then we move on to the resolutions held. Those are the resolutions previously introduced, and we don't have any action on those for tonight, so those are all going to continue to be held. Yes. No, that's because, that's because that's held. So well, it should be, oh, you know what, okay. So on the resolutions held, there are two resolutions that have previously been introduced. Which numbers were they? Okay.
225119R and 235119.
Yeah. All right, so there are two other, they're not for action tonight, but just to note, on the resolutions held agenda, there are two resolutions, 225119R and 235119R, both by Councilmember Robinson, that were introduced at our last meeting. They've been referred to the Public Safety Committee. Public Safety Committee, I know, is meeting on June 5th. They both deal with June 3rd. They deal with the marijuana legalization issue and marijuana conviction records. So they were introduced, but by accident, they were not included here. That takes us through the agenda and everything else. And I'm just going to quickly note, because that reminds me, we have a number of committees that are going to be meeting, I think, between now and our next meeting, that are likely to produce items that might be ready for our next meeting, our first meeting in June, which is going to be June 3rd. So I know, for example, the Housing Committee is meeting actually this week on the what we call the HUD budget, which is federal funds that we receive, and grants are made. The council has to approve the budget that we send down to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and there's going to be a joint public hearing with the Housing Committee and Community Development Agency on Thursday, and then the Housing Committee is also scheduled another meeting to consider the housing legislation that was introduced tonight. The Public Safety Committee, I think you have 3 committee meetings scheduled, one dealing with the marijuana legislation, another dealing with the Community Police Relations Board, and ACPAC, the Albany Community Police Advisory Committee. And then a third one looking at issues related to fireworks. Planning committee, I think you're meeting on the 29th. Is that on the methadone clinic? On methadone clinics. The law committee hasn't scheduled a meeting yet, but they're going to be meeting. Continue discussion on the hen ordinance. And are there any committees? And Mr. O'Brien is working on it.
Yeah, we're trying to nail down the commissioners in terms of
Right.
meeting their services committee sometime next for the agenda and
Okay. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to go back. I guess the patroons are not going to be here. Michelle said. So that means we will not take the resolution out of order. We'll just do it regular order, and we'll do a presentation at a later point.
Jack was just saying briefly explain to Mr. Ford this resolution.
Yeah, I think I touched that. Yeah. Okay. All right. And when we go through the agenda, there's a point where we have reports of standing committees. So you'll hear, and that's right after we do the local laws. So the various committee chairs that have either had committee meetings or have committee meetings coming up will stand, give an oral report to the council in terms of what's happening. I think takes us through the agenda. Are there any questions on the agenda or anything? Any of the students have questions on what we just went through or the agenda? All set? All right, we'll have a little bit extra time. We start our meeting at 7 o'clock. Let me also just remind me, I forgot, Monday is Memorial Day observed, so the Memorial Day parade is on Monday. Huh? You have a letter? Okay, because I've been trying to get from the mayor's office the details, and I don't have anything. None of us. Okay. So I guess the big question is, or if you want, what time and where do we meet? Yeah. Okay, so the parade is Monday. I think it's at 9:30. I think last year it was some screw up in time. But we'll send out information in terms of where and everything else, so if members want to march in the Memorial Day parade. You know, because I reached down to the mayor's office to see what they have. They don't have anything yet, so they can't find anything. All right. Okay. Any other questions or discussion or anything like that? If not, I guess we have a little bit of time. The acoustics in this room are bad. I acknowledge that. So members, we always want to make sure you speak into the mic because that picks it up on the sound system if it's working. We do also broadcast our minutes on our Facebook page, so they will be posted at some point, and hopefully if everything works and the audio works, you can observe tonight's meeting. All right, I think we're all set until 7 o'clock.
My watch is 6:59, people, so. It's 6:59. My watch is slow. I thought it was like close. I'd like to call the order tonight, Monday, May 20th, 2019, our Albany Common Council meeting. As you can see, we have some very special guests. It's our annual Youth and Government Night. And before we start our meeting, I'd like each one of our youth in government to stand up, say what grade you're in, what school you go to, and tell the people a little bit something about yourself or what your goals are in the future. So at this time, I'm going to start to my right. Ms. Pleers, the young lady who's with you, I'll start to my right. Just introduce yourself. Start in the front, Councilwoman Pleers. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Daniel Pottinger. I go to school, Albany High School, and my name is Daniel Pottinger. I'm going to Albany High School, and I'm going to Binghamton for college, I guess.
Thank you. Can someone close the door, please? Because thank you. Really appreciate
Hello.
that. Thank you, sir. Young man.
Hello, I'm Lucas. I'm in 12th grade. I go to Albany High School, and I'm going to University of Toronto.
Great. Yep. Mm-hmm.
My name is Anane, and I'm from Albany High School, and I'm planning to go to UAlbany for business or law with a minor in Korean. So,
Nice.
My name is Justin Hartfield. I go to Green Tech, and I'm a freshman.
High, and I'm a sophomore.
Hello, my name is Natalie Penna. I'm a junior at Albany High School, and I plan on majoring in environmental science.
Hi, my name is Noah Levin. I go to Albany High School. I haven't figured out my college plans yet. I'll be taking a gap year in Israel next year.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Quinn Urich. I'm a senior at Albany High School, and I'm going to American University.
Hi, my name is Daniel Polydor. I'm a junior at Albany High School. I plan to study law.
Hi, I'm Temba Peterson. I'm a junior also at Albany High School, and I plan on studying music.
Hello, I'm Priyanka. I'm a sophomore at Albany High School, and I don't really know what I want to do.
Hello, my name is Jermaine Moore, and I'm a sophomore at Green Tech, and I plan to major in law.
Cheryl?
Hello, my name is Adam Alexic. I'm a senior at Albany High School, and I'd like to go into law.
And he's attending Harvard. God bless him.
Hello, everyone. My name is George Pounds, and I'm attending Siena. Oh, well, I go to Albany High School. I'm a senior, and I'm attending Siena for bio next year.
Congratulations to all our students. Oh, that's right. I'm forgetting mine. Come up here. Wait. I'm forgetting them. Yo.
My name is Eshy Phillips. I'm in 10th grade, and I go to Albany High School, and I plan to major in either law or psychology.
Hi, I'm Paris Lyons. I go to Albany High. I'm in 10th grade, and I plan on studying environmental studies.
Hi, my name is Kavon Burke. I attend Green Tech High School, a member of the National Honor Society, and I've committed to the College of St. Rose, and will be attending for business.
Nice. So congratulations to all our youth here, and we thank you. We love you being here. So with that being said, could we all please stand? Thank you. And before we begin, I would like to recognize our new city clerk, Danielle Gillespie. The interviewing committee did a great job. We had a lot of great candidates apply for the position, and without a doubt, she did stand out as one of the stars, and we are glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to say a few words?
I'm very honored to be here and to serve you all. This is a very special meeting for me because I get to see some of the youth that I knew when I was at Montessori Magnet School. I'm very honored, and I look forward to a long-standing relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conti? Patroons?
Yeah, I just want to note, the patroons are not going to be here tonight, so we will not change the order of business, and we'll adopt that resolution as part of our regular order, and we'll make that presentation at a later date. So in that
Gotcha.
case, so
Thank
we're
you.
going to then start.
Now we'll be moving now to the public comment period
with public comment, correct.
of our agenda. Once again, each individual, you'll have 5 minutes to speak on a topic you choose to speak about. Council members cannot address you, so please don't ask them any questions. Please address the chair afterwards in a later portion of the meeting. If council members feel the need to, they will address any questions or things you speak about at public comment period. So with that being said, can the clerk please call the first speaker?
Lisa Heyman.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Lisa Heyman, and I am here speaking on behalf of my son, who is a new resident to the city of Albany. He just moved to an apartment over on 77 Columbia, and what started out as a great move to the city of Albany has now become a parking nightmare for him. He is a resident. He also works in the city of Albany, and he has parking restriction. He is not able to apply for a parking permit. We checked with the clerk's office. The zone is right behind his apartment building, which would be Zone C, and I am here to implore you to extend that zone to accommodate him and anyone else. Since this is really becoming a very residential area, there are more apartments being built downtown. Pearl Street, I've been a paralegal working downtown for decades. I've seen the growth in just the last 2 years. I've had a chance to speak with Ms. Love about this situation, and I've got the tickets that he's incurred in just the month that he has lived here. So to have to move his car every 2 hours is a hardship, and I think that the rules need to be changed now to allow for the new residents who are moving into the downtown area to permit them to apply for and get a parking permit so that they're not incurring these tickets, which will end up causing tremendous financial hardship on them.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Laura Feltz.
Hello, how are y'all doing? Thank you for having me.
And can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure, my name is Laura Feltz. I live over at 143 Eagle Street, apartment number 1.
My name again is Laura Feltz, and I'm the Homeless Prevention Program Coordinator at United Tenants of Albany. That's a local nonprofit down the street that helps renters in this community that are dealing with, better, louder? Yes? Okay. Oh, that's weird. All right. Should I start over? What do you think?
Take your time.
Did you get some of it? Okay. My name's Laura Feltz. So I work at United Tenants of Albany. It's a nonprofit down the street that works with tenants in this community that are dealing with housing instability. And I'm commenting today about the need for the Albany Common Council to pass the proposed local resolution that's in support of the good cause eviction legislation and the removal of geographic restrictions of ETPA. I've been working at United Tenants for just 4 years, and in this very short time, I've attended court with about 1,200 households to stand with them as they faced eviction. In our local housing court, that's just in the room next door, we've had over 5,000 eviction proceedings filed by landlords every year for the last 2 years, and we're on pace to exceed that very sad number again this year. The thousands of evictions that are taking place in Albany are disproportionately impacting already marginalized populations, and at present, about 60% of the people that live in Albany are renting, myself included, and we really need to be realistic that the prospect of homeownership is out of reach for us. We deserve to feel safe and secure in our housing. I'm personally here tonight to ask the Albany Common Council to make the decision to stand with the families that I've met and continue to meet in our local housing court here in City Hall who are having to fight so unbelievably hard to preserve something so central to life as stable housing. Before us, we have a resolution that, if passed, would play an integral role in pressuring our state government to expand necessary tenant protections this year. And I hope that you'll agree with me that your neighbors who rent deserve stability that would allow them to invest in their neighborhoods. I hope that you all will support the resolution and pass it. Thank you.
Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Tiffany Wallace.
Good evening. My name is Taffany Wallace. I reside at 8G Denise Drive in Latham, New York. And I'm here this evening to, again, give a testimony regarding the Good Cause Bill that we would really need you to support and pass this resolution in the city of Albany. I'm a single parent, and I work full-time for New York State, 14 years, and I'm also a full-time student at the College of St. Rose. I'm here today to speak to you about the importance and critical need to pass the resolution in support of the good cause eviction legislation and the removal of geographic restrictions of ETPA. I was evicted from my apartment December 2017, not because I didn't pay my rent. It was paid before the month came in every month. I wasn't evicted for damaging property or being a bad neighbor. I was evicted because I reported my landlord to code enforcement. My bathroom had a host of issues. The office had a leaking crack in the ceiling, and the rear entrance of my building had a lock that could only be opened from the inside with a key. I paid over $1,000 a month for rent. I was fortunate enough to meet and align with a few good people that helped me fight the good fight. United Tenants Association armed me with information that I otherwise would not have known or had access to. Attorney Kevin Lewebrand took my case pro bono, and I hadn't asked him to. We lost the initial eviction hearing and trial. This court ruled that although I hadn't done anything wrong, there was a concern about my relationship with my landlord going forward. So the eviction was granted. And so I had to move. If I had to move in the middle of the semester, I can assure you I would have had a nervous breakdown. Attorney Lewebrand was willing to still fight, and so was I. He filed a motion to stop the eviction with the intent to appeal the lower court's decision. I was able to finish the semester strong and find a new home before going back to court. My situation ended well, but many others don't. Families, children, and elderly are wrongfully displaced daily. This is immoral, it's unjust, and it's an abuse of power, and we need to do something about it. If you don't pass this resolution, you're giving landlords and developers the right to wreak havoc on renters. Do what is right and fair for the greater good and not for a few privileged with an objective to capitalize. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Roger Mankovics.
My name is Roger Markovics. I live at 38 Myrtle Avenue, and my wife Maria back here and I spent 43 years with United Tenants of Albany. Began in 73, I think it was. We retired a couple years ago, and we're strong advocates still for affordable housing and tenants' rights. And so Laura Feltz and Tiffany are the leadership of United Tenants now. And so the issues that they're working on and that we're supporting are two. One is that the setting the bar for evictions to be evictions for cause, good cause, not just because a landlord doesn't like you, or that you've done something to offend him or her. It's housing is a human right, not a commodity. Tenants are human beings, not pieces of furniture that you move around and get rid of if you don't like the decor. So the good cause for eviction legislation, I know it's going to be at the Housing Committee next week. We'd like to ask the Common Council to pass a resolution supporting it. And the second piece of tenants' rights legislation is the extending the Emergency Tenant Protection Act that was passed in 1974 for the 8 counties of New York City and the surrounding suburbs. But we need that extended upstate to the entire state to allow localities to begin to develop rent regulations to protect tenants from rent gouging and from and have economic justice in housing. The usual opposition to these measures come from landlords, developers, the real estate lobby in general. And the usual knee-jerk opposition is a simplistic one of saying, let the law of supply and demand allow the free market system to work. There's 2 flaws in that. One is that it's not a free market. All housing is subsidized in one way or another, mostly through the federal government and other ways. All of you who are homeowners can get to deduct the interest you're paying on your mortgage every year. That loss to the U.S. Treasury costs the U.S. Treasury more than 3 times of what gets allocated through the federal budget process for HUD to do affordable housing, low-income housing. It's an unfair system all the way through. Secondly, is that while tenants are left out of that process, the real barriers to developing affordable housing or devoting housing of any kind are 2. One is zoning ordinances and building codes. I'm not talking about building codes for health and safety. I'm talking about gold-plated building codes about what you got to do with setbacks and all that kind of stuff there. But zoning laws, and zoning laws go back to the beginning of this country and elsewhere in the world, but mostly in the industrial world, that to protect the interests of existing property owners so that they can protect their investment and keep others out or regulate them in a way that they're least threatening to them. It's a real constraint, but we are saying that because housing shouldn't be just a commodity, that it's a human right, that the rent regulations should be seen in the same light as zoning. If you can zone and have building codes that regulate landlords, well, why not regulate landlords to protect the hidden investors in housing?
You have 1 minute left, Mr. Markowitz.
The hidden investors in housing are tenants who pay the rent, and without the rent, this development doesn't happen. And so there needs to be recognition given to tenants who pay rent because they are the hidden investors, and economic justice in housing should recognize the rights of tenants to have fair rents and eviction protections. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markowitz. And can someone help me in the back? Please open that door because I don't want them to think they can't come in. There's 2 people I want, we don't want them to think they can't come in just in case. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
That concludes the speakers for this evening.
Well, that ends the portion of our public comment period. And so we move on. Mr. Conti, do we have minutes from last week? No. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, point of privilege, please.
Pardon me?
I have a point of privilege.
Okay. I can't. Yeah. Okay, we can close it back. I just wanted to open because I didn't want them to think they could not come into the council chambers. Is it too loud? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hoey. Report, thank you so much. Sorry about that. Reports of standing committees. Ms. Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Planning and Economic Development Committee has a meeting on Ordinance 326218 regarding the operating of methadone dispensaries scheduled on Wednesday, May 29th at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Councilmember Igo?
I'm sorry I didn't think ahead, given Adam the time to do this, but the law committee met last Thursday evening to take up the proposed amendment of keeping of hens in the city, and we had a very lengthy conversation. There were some issues that arose concerning the buildings department, what they thought they could do, not do. We'd like to talk to the police department about it and to animal control. So we hope to be getting some questions resolved and setting up another meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Igo. No,
Councilmember Alpeliers?
Thank you. And please bear with me. My cell phone died, and so my calendar I can't access. I'm going to be looking to Michelle to help me with the dates. So June 3rd, the Public Safety Committee will be meeting to discuss legislation regarding Councilman Robinson's legislation. Let's see here. 2251-19R and 2252-19R regarding the marijuana legislation. So that will be a meeting scheduled for June 3rd at 5:30. The next meeting that we will be having is scheduled for June 5th. June 5th. That meeting will be to discuss the CPRB, Citizens Police Review Board, and the Albany Community Police Advisory Committee to discuss how we as a community can work to enhance their initiatives. And then the last meeting is scheduled for June 10th. Okay, I'm doing better than I thought. June 10th to discuss fireworks in the city of Albany. Councilman Ballerin brought to the table concerns from his constituents. And so we want to hear from Albany residents. Is this a citywide issue? Do residents want to ban fireworks in the city? Is there a way that we can work together to ensure that people are educated about when to use fireworks so that they don't become a nuisance to residents? So that meeting will happen here on the 10th at 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Councilmember Kimbrough.
Thank you, Madam President. The Housing and Community Development Committee will be meeting on May 23rd. It's a joint meeting with the Albany Community Development Agency to announce the Year 45 CDBG, Home, and ESG preliminary awards. That's the 23rd of May, 5:30 at 200 Henry Johnson Boulevard. And on May 30th, Housing and Community Development will be meeting to discuss Resolution 315219. It's the rent control and reasonable evictions resolution that's currently about to be introed. Thank you.
Thank you. No further discussions on standing committees. Mr. Conti?
Madam President, the ordinances on tonight's agenda are held.
Thank you. Moving on to our next introductions of resolutions. Mr. Anane.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Ordinance 245219R and request passage on a roll call vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of Common Council in support of the City of Albany waiving the civil service exam fees for recent high school graduates who reside within the City of Albany.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Councilmember Anane.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of this bill is to eliminate a barrier for our city's recent high school graduates by waiving the civil service exam fee and allowing them to qualify for good-paying public service works. Qualification for a civil service position should not be determined by an ability to pay. Rather, applicants should be evaluated based on their knowledge and talent. And we as a Common Council should do all we can to assist any recent graduate who shows a willingness to take the test to work. Many of Albany students hail from low-income households, as evident by the fact that roughly 80% of Albany high school students qualify for free and reduced lunch program. And they face many significant barriers. Removing this one will help them get towards a great career in public service and overall great future. Simply put, inability to pay for the test should not be a barrier for good paying jobs. Let's make Albany a city of opportunity, not a city of barriers. I want to thank my colleagues who supported this measure. I want to thank the Civil Service Commission who voted unanimously to approve this waiver for recent high school graduates. And just to kind of go into a little bit of the details of what this will mean for recent high school graduates, and I see potential some here. Once you graduate, you have up to 2 years to take 2 free exams. 2 free exams. So again, some of the exams you have to pay $30 for the application. Some you have to pay $20. $30 for uniform, which is considered firefighters or police officers. Non-uniform is $20. And again, this is just another example of what the work that we're here as elected officials are doing. How an idea from being a football coach, encouraging one of my students to take the civil service exam and not being able to afford it, and now we're able to waive at least 2 civil service application fees for those individuals. So again, I just want to thank all the sponsors. I want to thank my colleagues who supported this resolution, and I also want to thank the Civil Service Commission for approving this unanimously. Thank you.
No further discussion. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anane,
Yes.
Miss Appears,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Ballerin,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Conti,
Yes, go sponsor, please.
Miss Dochette,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Miss Fahey,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Miss Farrow, Mr. Flynn,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Hoey,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Igo,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Kimbrough,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Miss Love,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Rosbison, 14 approved.
Resolution passes.
Okay. 15 approved.
Resolution passes.
Moving on to introductions of resolutions, Mr. Anane.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Resolution 255219R and ask for its introduction.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Albany recognizing the importance of the walkability throughout the city and calling on the Albany Police Department's Traffic Safety Division to adopt a policy ensuring that pedestrian signals are automatically included whenever traffic signals are changed, upgraded, or installed.
Councilmember Conti?
Madam President, the resolution is referred to the Planning Committee.
Thank you.
Moving on to introductions of resolutions, Ms. Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Resolution 265219R and ask for its introduction and passage and a roll call vote thereon.
This one's passed. This one's, no, that's not the pass. I didn't think so.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council confirming the appointment of William Petit as a member of the Albany Parking Authority Board of Directors.
Thank you, Councilmember Conti.
Madam President, the resolution is referred to Planning.
Moving on to introductions of resolutions, Ms. Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Resolution 275219R and ask for its introduction.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council confirming the appointment of Beth Lacey as a member of the Albany Parking Authority Board of Directors.
Thank you, Councilmember Conti.
Madam President, the resolution is referred to Planning.
Introduction of resolutions, Ms. Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Resolution 285219R and ask for its introduction.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council confirming the appointment of Christopher Burke as a member of the Albany Parking Authority Board of Directors.
Thank you, Councilmember Conti.
Madam President, the resolution is referred to Planning.
Thank you.
Introductions of resolutions, Mr. Anane.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Resolution 295219R and ask for its introduction.
And passage, right?
And passage, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Albany Common Council congratulating the Albany Patrons basketball team on their professional basketball league championship winning game.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Councilmember Anane?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. First, I just want to congratulate the Patroons on such a wonderful year. As someone who was born and raised in Brooklyn, I know basketball firsthand. Most of my friends used to play from morning till night. It's also home of Michael Jordan. I know the importance of how basketball could change a student athlete's life, how it could change a player's life, and just to kind of have a mentor who is, like many of the coaches here with the Albany Patroons, the impact that they could make in a child's life. So I just want to congratulate them on such a successful year. They have become the pride and joy of the city of Albany. As a football coach, winning a game is hard. Making it to the playoffs, that's another challenge in itself. Winning a championship, I don't care what level you're on, Pop Warner, high school, college, professional, that is a huge undertaking. So again, I want to congratulate the Albany Patroons on such a successful year and making Albany the pride and joy again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Igo?
Albany's
Is there any further discussion on the resolution? No? Okay. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anane,
Yes.
Ms. Aplears,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Ballerin,
Yes, co-sponsor.
Mr. Conti,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Dochette,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Fahey,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Farrell, Mr. Flynn,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Hoey,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Igo,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Kimbrough,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Love,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
15 affirmed.
Resolution passes.
Moving on to introduction of resolutions, Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to introduce Resolution 305219R and ask for a roll call vote on thereon.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council consenting to an adjustment in salary for certain positions for the 2019 budget.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the resolution? No? Can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anane,
Yes.
Mr. Aplears, Ms. Aplears,
Yes.
Mr. Ballerin,
Yes.
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Ms. Dochette,
Yes.
Ms. Fahey, Ms. Farrell, Mr. Flynn,
Yes.
Mr. Hoey,
Yes.
Mr. Igo,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Kimbrough,
Yes.
Miss Love,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
15 affirmed, yes.
Thank you. Resolution passes.
Continuing on with the introduction of resolution, Mr. Conti.
I ask majority consent to add resolution 3152-19R and 3252-19R to tonight's agenda.
Do I hear a second on both of those recommendations? Mr. Flynn, second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion so one. So that's 14 yes and 1 nay. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed Resolution 3152-19R and ask for its introduction.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
A resolution of the City of Albany's Common Council in support of the removal of the geographic restrictions under the Emergency Tenant Protection Act and good cause eviction legislation.
Thank you. Councilmember Conti.
Madam President, this resolution is referred to the Housing Committee.
Thank you.
Moving on to introduction resolutions, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Resolution 3252-19R. I ask for its passage on a roll call vote.
Thank you. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council authorizing the mayor to execute a home rule request to allow alienation of parkland to accommodate underground piping through Lincoln Park to Morton Avenue for the Big C Disinfection and Floatables Control Facility and associated infrastructures as part of the Albany Pool Community's long-term control plan and Beaver Creek Clean River project.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Councilmember Hoey.
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam President. I woke up last Thursday morning at 3 in the morning after Mr. Commissioner Coffey spoke to us about the changes in the plans. Number one, I lay in bed and I don't like being rushed. And unless something's life or death, we don't rush things. The only thing we should be rushing or doing fast is if you're running on a track. This thing really needs to be looked at. Now, Commissioner Coffey came in and made a comment that we're going to change a single stream sewer line that only handles stormwater. And now we're going to be putting in, they call them floatables, but it's what you'd get when you flush your toilet. So now we're making a single system into a dual. And I have a problem with that. I think that's going the wrong direction. And I refuse to be a rubber stamp. I didn't get elected just to get along with people. I got elected to represent my people. And at the meeting Wednesday, I told everybody, we got problems. I have 55 houses in my area where the toilets or in the basement, the sewer backs up and they get sewage in there. And the city refuses to help the people when that happens. And if your homeowner insurance doesn't cover it, the cost is yours. And I keep hearing, oh, we got to rush this, and oh, we passed this last year. We passed something a little bit different. We did not pass that we're going to turn a single sewer into a combined sewer system, something that we're supposed to be away from. I met with Tom Brady, who works for the county health department, Commissioner Whalen on Friday, they know nothing about this. And they showed, I could see concern in their eyes when I told them about it. I was there on a different issue concerning sewers, but not on this one, and I mentioned that. So here we are going, we're going to pass legislation, given permission to do this and that, when we don't have a well worked out plan. And I mean, I took pictures today on Hillcrest Avenue. 3 sewer line breaks on a brand new road that we just paved 3 years ago. We got a definite infrastructure problem in the city. And one thing that's really bugging me is the amount of development that we got going on. Are we fixing this system to allow developers to come in, get IDA funding, so they don't have to pay taxes for the next 20 or 30 years? We're fixing it up for them so they can have 300 toilets flushing. You know, this is going to go down. People will look back in history, and I'll probably be the only dissenting vote on this, but I'm proud that I'm going to do it because this is wrong. And we need to have a good plan. We can't have somebody come in and speak for like I think they spoke 30 minutes, and we could barely get any questions in. Again, everything is rushed. We got to go. We got to do this. We got to do that. Well, you know, when I took this job, it wasn't to be rushed. It was to really think things out, to talk to my fellow council members, and really come up with a plan. You know, at the beginning of this meeting, we talked about, well, there's only been two vetoes since the 90s. I mean, can 17 people think alike that much, that there's never dissension, never talk about how's a better way to do things? We got a serious infrastructure problem with the city. I mean, you just look at the roads, you know it. But underground, that's where we got problems, with water lines and sewer lines. So I hope you think about this before you vote yes on it, because this is going to come back, and people will know about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson.
So I echo some similar concerns. I attended about 3 or 4 meetings. I attended one meeting with Creighton Story because, you know, out of nowhere, it was opposition put up by the community closest to the school. And then I heard that they found a sewer line and they wanted to dig underneath to attach onto the sewer line from 3rd Ave. At that meeting, members of the community, you know, they had a lot of questions and concerns, and I just felt a little bit apprehensive when I heard that they moved forward with the project, and they offered the members of Creighton Story to come to another another part of our ward's community meeting. So I don't really feel, and I didn't feel comfortable that the immediate concerns of the people that will be directly affected by this change. I felt like they responded to the initial concerns that were expressed at TOAST, but when it came to Creighton Story, it basically went to another conversation. So in moving forward, I'm a bit reluctant. Tonight I may support it, but it's not wholeheartedly, because I feel like a group of people that it could potentially bite and burn are really left out. So if this was to happen, and the concerns that they were talking about is sometimes the sewer system has odors, and they were concerned that they already live with natural odors when it starts raining. So if they now start putting floatables through there, would that increase the odors that they're dealing with? And I know that they said they did a study, but my concern is that they did a study and they didn't go back and have a conversation with a group that they agreed to meet with. So I just wanted to be on record that moving forward, I'm a little concerned about that piece right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Brien.
Couple of points. There is a consent order, which I think has a completion date of about 3 years out. So although all the details of the Lincoln Park plan aren't rolled into that consent order, certainly the overall concept is. And my understanding, and correct me whether I'm wrong, by saying yes to this tonight, the New York State Legislature then gives us the permission to proceed. And Richard, I believe there will be another vote on whether the details of this are all that they're supposed to be. So I plan on voting yes tonight. And I certainly appreciate Mr. Hoey's concerns about our infrastructure, both our infrastructure of our streets and what's below our streets needs a lot of attention. And I know the water commissioner came in with a rather tedious description of this whole project. And if necessary, I'd be happy to convene the General Services Committee because water department does come under General Services. Although in general, I must say, I found discussions like this to be better in front of the whole council caucus because it gets a bigger audience, and certainly this affects the entire city, not just Lincoln Park. But I appreciate your concerns about infrastructure. Our streets are the worst I've seen them in several seasons and probably the slowest response. So I think a lot of our infrastructure needs attention and needs equitable consideration, and we have to get our commissioner down here to explain it.
Thank you. Councilmember Fahy?
Thank you. Well, I do think that if there are still concerns over on 3rd Avenue, I think that Commissioner Coffey would be very happy to meet with people again. Is that what we're talking about, that area, or Creighton Story? Okay. And I think that it's important that any of those concerns get cleared up. I agree that it is important that we have a better understanding of this particular plan and the entire long-term control plan for our infrastructure, water sewer infrastructure here in the city of Albany and actually in the region. We have had those discussions in previous councils where the water department has gone into a great deal of detail about the long-term control plan, but it's important for everyone to understand that our incredibly aging water sewer infrastructure, the cost is in the billions in order to bring it up to date so that it serves everyone here in the city. And I, for one, have full confidence in our water department in addressing the issues with our water sewer. These are complicated issues, and they have done, I think, a tremendous job of breaking down what needs to be done. A lot of green infrastructure, a lot of different projects that have been planned out over quite a few years. But there's always room for more education of both the council and the general public on these issues. But I have always found our commissioner of the water department to be willing to sit down and talk to anyone about the plans we have for our water sewer infrastructure. In particular, this Beaver Creek Clean River project, there have been numerous public meetings on this entire plan. There is also a community advisory group that was created because of concerns some of the neighbors had. Our administration, our water department, has put in many, many hours in trying to explain what they are doing to the public. Now, the Beaver Creek Clean River Plan is a truly exciting project that is going to benefit the entire city as far as I'm concerned. There's going to be, when we're talking about the ravine that's over near Toast, water sewer infrastructure goes through there, and it's all going to be updated so that we have less pollution going into our Hudson River. But along with that, we are going to see tremendous improvements in that neighborhood. That entire ravine, which when there are overflows does have an odor, that's going to be completely taken care of. There's going to be a very large educational component that youth students from Toast and their teachers and neighbors are going to be able to use. They're creating a park-like setting. And that's part of what this is in a park, this area, and that's part of what this parkland alienation is doing. It's allowing some of those much-needed infrastructure repairs to proceed by alienating the parkland. So people that have questions about this project and other projects throughout our city, I'm completely in favor of bringing the water department back and having a fuller discussion if you felt like the one that we had last week was much too short. These are complicated issues, and it really deserves all of our time and attention. But I fully support this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Conti?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to read Section 1 of the state legislation that we would be supporting. Section 1, subject to the provisions of this act, the City of Albany, Albany County, acting by and through its governing body, that's us, is hereby authorized to discontinue the use of parklands and alienate such lands, more particularly described in Section 3 of this act, for the purpose of construction and maintenance of a new underground pipe through Lincoln Park, in connection with the disinfection of floatables control project and associated infrastructure, also known as Beaver Creek Project, within such parklands and upon such other terms and conditions as determined by the governing body, us, of the City of Albany. So, again, as we want to emphasize again, this is an authorization. We're requesting the state legislature to give us authorization to discontinue certain parklands for the project. It comes back to us. And the project itself comes back to us before anything can be taken, anything can be done. So we're not actually making any final approvals tonight. We're asking for authorization to further consider and discuss. The reason why we need to do it tonight is because it is a home rule. It has to pass the legislature. They're going to be leaving in a matter of weeks. If it does not get done this session, i.e. next month before they leave, it will take another year before it gets back to them, and that puts the project off further in terms of the timelines and the consent decree that we have to comply with. The home rule that we adopted last year, and that was signed into law by the governor, stands. That part of the project stands. This doesn't change that. This is a modification or an addition in terms of that additional piping. But the basic project is the same, has been discussed, et cetera. And again, it comes back to us for a final say. This is not the final say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Farrell?
I just wanted to point out, and I know this is on the home rule message, Richard, and I appreciate that designation, but just since we've spoken about this a little bit, I've been to several meetings on this, and a reminder of what's happening right now is there are pipes that were actually built in the 1800s that are completely collapsed, which is one of the reasons why you're smelling the sewer smells, because there's no pipe system to make it go through there. The overflows in that ravine, when we say overflows, that means poop and toilet paper, and the children cut through that. So right now, not only are we talking about the environmental safety of the Hudson, we're also talking about safety of our kids not walking through poop, which is what I asked when I was in the meeting. I said, is that just a nice way of saying our kids are walking through poop? And he was like, yeah. So this is, I understand we have to be very careful with what we do, and we do need more time with Commissioner Coffey. We absolutely do. He said he needed like an hour and a half with us, and I am all in. I can't wait to hear it, and I would think we need to talk about it. But this is a well thought out plan, and it's irresponsible to not fix this because our kids are walking through poop.
Thank you. Councilmember Robinson?
Thank you, Madam President. I have the same sentiments as Councilmember Hoey. I understand that this is a complex issue, and we as council members, we have a lot of issues that we do have to educate ourselves on in such a short amount of time, and sometimes we don't have the proper timing to properly vet certain pieces of legislation like we always should. And just for me, I haven't had the proper time to properly vet this piece of legislation, this resolution. I agree that we do need to handle the issues that are going on in our city, but I can't make a proper decision without having all the facts that I need in and time to consider those facts. And so on tonight, I'm going to be voting no to this resolution. I do think is something that we do need to discuss further in depth.
Thank you. Councilmember Love.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I'm going to vote no on this too. I've been talking to a couple of council members down here, and it is rushed. And nobody can sit there and give you all these packets that we have right here, and you can understand this, what's in it. It looks okay because it's black and white and some color in it. It looks good. But we don't know really what's going on. Like Farrell said, they use the nice term as poop, but we know what the, no, I know. I said you use the nice term as poop, but we all know what it is. So to me, I would like to sit down with some of the other council members, get together, and then we can have Commissioner Coffey to come back in. I think this is some long-term talking. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
And before, sorry, Mr. Johnson. Before Mr. Johnson, is there any other speakers? Because after this, you already spoke, Mr. Hoey. Only the sponsor gets to.
Thank you.
Speak. Yes. So, Mr. Hoey, you cannot speak. You already spoke on the resolution. I'm just making sure, because the sponsor, if he speaks twice, then you can't go out. Okay. Mr. Pleers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few thoughts. One, this process has been going on for some time. I can honestly say that this administration and Commissioner Coffey, they have really tried to ensure that council members and community members are educated about this project. I was invited to serve on the Community Advisory Committee and attended a few meetings, and then transitioned out to on maternity leave, so missed out on quite a bit of the meetings, but there have been multiple meetings. Just like any other public health issue, you are going to have people who are in favor of some level of mitigation, and then you're going to have people who are opposed, and that just comes with the nature of making decisions regarding the public's health. Councilwoman Farrell talked about one of the public health implications of not doing anything, and that is certain environmental pollutants and toxins that our residents are exposed to if we do nothing. So there are public health implications. I get the concern about being rushed, but that aside, we do have a responsibility to act, and Commissioner Coffey and his team, I echo Councilwoman Fahey, we have one of the best commissioners when it comes to our water department, hands down. He is thorough, and I just don't defer to him because he is thorough, but looking at his track record and his team's track record, they have put together a comprehensive plan that works to mitigate a long-standing issue. Tonight, we're not voting on yay or nay to the project. That comes later, but I just wanted to echo some of the sentiments that were made tonight because I felt that it was appropriate given that I was asked to serve on the Community Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
This will be the last speaker on this resolution.
So
Point of information, Mr. President.
Pardon me?
I have a point of information. If I'm not, a point of order, am I not allowed to address some of the, some
You can-
people said stuff that
You can
I'd
only,
like to re-
you can only speak on a resolution once. If you want to address it, you can address it, do a miscellaneous period.
Yeah, but then the vote's over.
Well, that's that.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam President. I felt the need to speak again because I was a part of many of those meetings. And you're right, Commissioner Coffey did come and address, he had multiple meetings, but he only had one meeting with the Creighton Story Tenant Association, and the decision to include Third Ave was a result of the reluctance of the, I don't know what name to call the neighborhood, but the people who live close to Toast. They were against trucks coming in and out of the facility. So yes, they were very responsive to the concerns that were brought up by that neighborhood association. But could you imagine how people on Third Ave felt that because someone else didn't want something, now their neighborhood was being included into the project? And so I just think that, yes, it was a lot of planning and a lot of thought put into it, but it included a neighborhood that had nothing to do with the conversation, and they only had one conversation with that neighborhood. So that's where my uncomfort feels. And as I said earlier, I was kind of on the fence as to which way I was going to go. But in listening to some of the concerns brought up by my colleagues, I think that I would feel the same way that I'm hearing in terms of, I think that it was rushed. And especially the last piece, when they included the new drain that they said that they found. So I think I want to say thank you to my colleagues for speaking loud and clear. I heard you, and that's all I have to say on this matter.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr.
Yes.
Anane? Mr. Anane?
Oh, yes.
Ms. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Ballerin?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dochette?
Yes.
Ms. Fahey?
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Farrell? Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
No.
Mr. Igo?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
No.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Yes.
Ms. Love?
No.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
No.
$11 affirmatives and 4 negatives.
Thank you. Resolution passes. Councilmember Conti?
Thank you, Madam President. The remaining resolutions on tonight's agenda are held.
Any miscellaneous business? Mr. Hoey.
Mr. President, I really feel terrible that democracy wasn't allowed to take place today, where comments were made and I wasn't able to rebut. I wasn't going to make anything strong, just give some facts. So I'll do it now. The water department is totally self-sufficient. You know, the Alcove Reservoir was designed in the 20s, the late 20s, and it provides water to the city totally by gravity. There's no power. Our colleagues back in the 20s were smart. They planned ahead for this city. They had funding. I mean, water was free up till, you know, I think when Mayor Corning dropped out, they started charging for water. But there is revenue coming in from that water. Where's it going? Why isn't that revenue being used to keep up with the infrastructure? And if they can't keep up with the infrastructure with that revenue, maybe we need to raise, the water rates. I don't know, but I know that this system is supposed to be independent. And hearing people say, well, the pipes were from the 1800s. Why are they still there? Why aren't we fixing them? Why aren't we planning? Commissioner Coffey, some people think he's great. I don't. Okay, that's my feeling. I've talked to Bill Simcoe, who works under him. That's the brains behind the operation. They pulled him out of retirement to do that. Okay, so, again, we passed, and I'm on record, passing the alienation for Lincoln Park. And all of a sudden it comes in, well, we've changed plans. Where were the hearings? Where were we notified that these plans have changed? Okay, they wanted to pass at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, and I sent out an email to everybody saying we need to talk to the commissioner. Why is this being changed all of a sudden? What's going on? Now, I brought up a point with Commissioner Coffey Wednesday saying, you're saying you have an agreement with Guilderland? And he sent me a copy of that email the next day very kindly. But if you read the document that was sent, it says Guilderland is amiable to allowing Albany sewage to go there. But that was last summer. They're not amiable now. I got email from Peter Barber, the supervisor of Guilderland, who signed that MOU, saying, no, we can't handle it. We're at capacity. So I'm talking about this is a holistic look, not just this Lincoln Park part or the Beaver Creek. This is the whole city. How do we handle our water? How do we handle our sewage? We got a problem. Yes, we have a consent order, but let's do it right the first time. And I don't like switching in the last minute. Oh, we found a pipe. Same thing happened up at 1211 Western Avenue. He found a 66-inch pipe that was from the Harriman campus put in by the state. We're going to let the developer tie into it. Well, great. You're giving a tax break to this developer. You're allowing him to tie into a state line, going down into the Crumbkill that goes through my ward. That's a disaster, that creek. It hasn't been taken care of. The water will back up if we get an increase. I got to protect the people in my ward. That's what I was elected to do. So, I hope you think about it. I woke up last week, like I told you, and I laid in bed and I realized maybe this is the most important thing that I'll do in my life is to speak up today. That's what we get elected to do, to speak up and look at things and question. But it seems like a lot of my colleagues, if you don't go along with the flow and you don't rubber stamp things, you're not fit to be with us. Well, that's not true. One person can make a difference. Why did we allow Lincoln Park to have toilet paper go out? What are we waiting for? Why can't we fix that problem now? Why do we have to spend $50 million to redo a park? That $50 million could be used to fix the pipes that are breaking in other parts of the city. This is just not right, and I'm really fired up tonight. And I'm sorry you're getting my wrath here, but, I hope people really think about why they ran for office and what they're trying to do. And are you making a difference to this community? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoey. Before I go on, he did address democracy in this chamber. What comes along with democracy is laws and rules of governance, and our rules govern that you are able to speak one time on a resolution. That's it. The sponsor of the resolution can speak twice, so democracy is still in order here. Also, Mr. Hoey, you talk about planning. I was on the council from 2006 to 2009. Mayor Jerry Jennings was the mayor of this city. This problem was never taken care of by that administration. We were on the council talking about this issue. So when you talk about planning, you just can't look at today. You have to look at where the city's been for the last 20, 25 years. So this infrastructure problem is huge. Have you reached out to your Congress members? Have you reached out to United States senators? We need the funding to do the proper infrastructure beneath our city. We're just seeing the effects of neglect. We're seeing the effects of past administrations not standing up and saying we have this problem, we have to deal with it. And we cannot forget that. This problem did not start today. This city has been aging for years, and we have not, past administrations, have not really took our congressional leaders to say our cities are old. We have Congress people who represent more than just our city. They represent small towns. How many times have we asked them, have you gone to your Congress member, United States Senator, asked for federal dollars to fix our crumbling infrastructure? These are things when we talk about democracy and we talk about accountability, looking at a city that has a budget of $178 million and looking at our city and saying, well, why aren't we fixing the pipes underneath we don't have the money to do it. We need partners. We need our federal partners to be asking for when the Congress is controlled by Democrats and we have a Democratic president. We need our congressmen and United States senators going there and saying, we need this money. I represent Albany, Schenectady, Troy, Amsterdam. These are all historical aging cities. So when we look at these problems, Mr. Hoey, and I'm passionate about this because I've sat here in 2006, same things we talked about. I sat here before I got into city council and hear over and over the same problems, the same issues. So to be fair, these issues did not start today. And this project is trying to begin that process of mitigating years and years of neglect and not following the law. So we must remember that. And that's what I would like to always remember. Where did we come from? Did we have things in place? And if we didn't, when a new administration, whoever that administration is, comes in and they begin to do the right thing, we must just not look at it as, why aren't we doing enough? We're trying as best as we can. And I believe we have to remember that. Ms. Farrell, thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to touch on something that was said earlier through United Tenants. You know, my mom lives on a fixed income, and my brother, they live in an apartment. And when they went to renew their lease, their rent went up $175 on one increase. And, you know, with new development coming in the community, I just think that some type of conversation about rent control needs to be held, because you have people that are buying properties not at market rate, and then they get it, and then they start having conversations with people talking about market rate. And, you know, you do no upgrades. You don't really respond to the needs of the tenant. And so, you know, we have a bunch of renters in the city, but we only have one United Tenants. And I'm pretty sure that they're overloaded with concerns and underprepared to deal with, you know, the issues of the city. And, you know, my mother and brother have a strong advocate for them. But, you know, I just think about the people that don't have a strong advocate for them. And, you know, when I listen to the woman's story about being in college and, you know, getting in a disagreement. I remember one time I was at work working for Parks and Rec, and I get a phone call, and my girlfriend said, "Baby, it's raining in our room." And when I came home, I mean, it literally was water coming down like it was a thunderstorm. And when I talked to the homeowner, the first thing she said, "Don't worry about it, my insurance will pay for it." And then when her adjuster came, he said something different. And it, you know, like me and her don't speak to this day because she kind of used her executive control and basically told us that we had to move out. So, you know, people shouldn't be put in that type of situation when they pay their rent, you know, they're respectful to the property, and they have no course of action when you get in this type of situation. So, you know, you know, I just feel bad for someone who couldn't afford $175 that didn't have money to move, so they have no choice. So with our city growing, and you know, as this woman said, her son moved into the downtown area and is now faced with difficulties in just trying to go to work, sleep, and enjoy, you know, your apartment. I think that we have to be mindful if we're going to transition. We need to transition to the new as well as be respectful to the current residents. So I don't know where that conversation goes, but I just wanted it on record that we need to have conversation because there's a lot of people coming in here to the planning board, zoning boards, making these promises and benefiting from tax breaks, and only to get away from there and become vultures and maniacs in our communities. So I just wanted to support the people that are trying to fight and make sure that the housing is fair in this community, and we just don't want it to be outpriced for our current residents. Thank you.
Mr. Igo? Years later. Ms. O'Shea.
I want to make it clear that I'm very supportive of legislation that would provide greater rights to tenants. One of the things that my impression of this particular legislation that bothers me a bit, and we might want to make recommendations for additional changes or new legislation, et cetera. But my understanding is it doesn't apply to recently built properties, especially, and then the ones that are getting tax write-offs on it. My understanding is the rent control, rent stabilization applies to properties that were in existence before a certain date, and I think it's sometime in like the 1970s or 60s or something like that. So that's a big concern of mine, that those landlords then are being capped in some way, that people who are doing major developments, and a lot of them major developments and corporations, et cetera, LLCs, that we will really have very little control over. They don't represent a lot of our housing that would be capped under this would be people who are, in some cases, maybe I'm wrong about this, but owner-occupied, or people who live locally, and certainly a lot of absentee landlords. So I'm supportive of anything that provides additional protections. $175 increase is outrageous. But I just wanted to note that as we're taking a look at that particular piece of legislation, I think we should be taking a closer look at this issue as well with regard to newer properties.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Mr. Conti?
Thank you, Mr. President. If there's Mr.
Well, Mr. Ballerin, I mean, we've been, yeah, but at the last minute, can you put up your?
Thank you, Mr. President. Wait. No, I mean, I do want to, the Columbia Street issue is not new, and one of the problems we have is a prohibition in state law to include streets that are zoned commercial, which Columbia is zoned commercial, and we can't include the permit system on commercial zone streets. And I think the nearest permit zone is way, if it was Zone C, is way down in the Pembroke area. That's, I think, pretty far removed from where Columbia is. But we are looking at the current system, which has to come up for reauthorization next year. But one of the problems is we do have certain constraints that the state legislature puts on us as well, and we need to figure all of that out. But if there is no further business, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. And you're welcome to go to the Elks Club.
All those in
for dinner.
favor say
Thank you.
aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.